From 1989 to 1997, 4 Batman movies were released: Tim Burton's Batman and Batman Returns, and Joel Schumacher's Batman Forever and Batman and Robin. The last two were met with some, well, let's just say Tim Burton's 2 movies were kind of critically acclaimed, while Joel Schumacher's were seen as one of the worst Batman movies ever, that including Batman and Robin.
Whoa, I think I just figured something out, Beavis. What? This sucks.
However, Batman and Robin wasn't supposed to be the ending of this Batman series. There was supposed to be one more Batman movie that would come out in 1999 that would bring the beloved villains and characters from the first 4 movies back, while introducing 2 new ones to the big screen. The movie has 2 working titles, at least from what I saw doing research. It's either Batman Unchained or Batman Triumphant. It was supposed to be out in the summer of 1999, but after the failure of Batman and Robin, Joel Schumacher decided to can the project overall, and plus George Clooney, who was scheduled to return as Batman in this movie, kind of quit, and they didn't really feel like looking for a new Batman, considering they were already going to spend all this money on the stars from the previous movies returning. Now, Batman, when it comes to lost movies, this isn't the first lost movie in the series, as back before Joel Schumacher's Batman Forever came out, Tim Burton was scheduled to still direct the line of movies that were left, and his version of Batman Forever has never been seen, or who knows if it even got it started working on, as it was supposed to feature the Riddler as the main villain, but instead of being played by Jim Carrey, it was supposed to be Robin Williams. That would have also been intriguing. And Two-Face wouldn't have been the main bad guy. Harvey Dent still would have been played by Billy D. Williams, and we never would have saw Two-Face up to that point. And it would have also featured Damon Wayans as Robin. Yes, Damon Wayans from Scary Movie, the Wayans brothers, White Chicks, that Damon Wayans. He even got paid for so-called being Robin, even though in the end he never was Robin in the first place, but he was supposed to be introduced as the Boy Wonder for the 1995 film. But with this movie, yeah, again, the stars from the previous 4 movies were supposed to return, and the storyline here would have been interesting. Now, you would have saw the return of Danny DeVito as Penguin, Michelle Pfeiffer as Catwoman, and Jim Carrey as the Riddler, but the big one here, and the one main focus, would have been Jack Nicholson returning as the Joker. Now, I know what you're thinking. Isn't everybody but the Riddler dead, and even in Batman and Robin, Poison Ivy and Arnold Schwarzenegger were also not dead? However, they were not planned for this movie, so that's why I didn't mention them. And yes, you're correct. 3 of the 4 villains in this movie are dead, but one of the villains that was supposed to get introduced in this movie was Scarecrow. Either, as I've seen from research, it would have been played by Jeff Goldblum or Nicolas Cage. Again, either would have been a very intriguing. Who would I think have done better? Maybe Nicolas Cage, just because of the craziness of Scarecrow. And it's supposed to lead to him spraying George Clooney's Batman with the fear toxin that ends up having Batman see hallucinations of his past villains. Michelle Pfeiffer, again, was supposed to return as the love interest in Catwoman, as she is still alive, so there was no, hallucinating there. One of the bigger stories, however, as Batman's trying to fight the Scarecrow, is that there's one more person after her, or him. That being Harley Quinn. This was the movie where she was supposed to get her big debut on the big screen, a live-action adaptation. But it would have been a little bit different from what we know, as the Harley Quinn we've known from the animated series and the comic books. She fell in love with the Joker, being a psychiatrist at Arkham Asylum as Harleen Quinzel, and she fell so deeply for him that she eventually fell in love with him after he manipulated her into thinking that he loved her in this case. But in this movie, that's not what was going to happen. Harley Quinn, who would have either, again, they never hired an actress for this role, but apparently the 2 decisions they were going to make was either going to be Madonna, as you see in the fan-made poster here, or Courtney Love, who was still pretty popular back then because of her band Hole, and her being known to have been married to Kurt Cobain in her life. Again, who do I think would have made a better Harley Quinn? I don't think either one's a good choice, but Madonna, for me, just kind of seems more obvious than Courtney Love at this point, but that's neither here nor there. Anyway, from what I saw at the beginning of the movie, was supposed to see the Joker in this window, and he basically looks at her and says, "Kill Batman," to which she replies, "Yes," laughs maniacally, breaks the window, and that's when the opening screen would have popped up, Batman triumphant. But this isn't a case of her being in love with the Joker. She's doing this as revenge against Batman because Joel Schumacher was going to make Harley Quinn the Joker's daughter.
Boy, if you don't...
Yes, that's right. Joel Schumacher was going to change Harley Quinn's backstory, and I think this is what DC wanted, but in the end couldn't get it because, again, Batman and Robin tanked so badly that they were afraid to even start making this thing because Joel Schumacher ruined the Batman franchise, and I don't think they really wanted him to do this again. So yeah, this isn't his first interesting take on a character, however, as Batwoman, played by Alicia Silverstone, who would have returned as Batgirl in this movie, instead of being Jim Gordon's daughter, Barbara Gordon, ended up being Alfred's niece in Batman and Robin, so this wouldn't have been the first big change-up that Joel Schumacher would have made to the Batman characters. However, you can kind of see why maybe they wanted to change Harley Quinn's projection here for what she was and who she was and how she became who she was, because at this point in time, she was a popular character, but she wasn't well known. This was right around the time when she was starting to be put in comic books and would even get her own solo comic book later down the line that year, but she wasn't necessarily a well-known character where her backstory was just, if you didn't really know the comics that well, you would have just saw her as Joker's henchwoman and nothing more. So maybe changing up the story would have been better, but I don't like the idea that she would have been the Joker's daughter because, well, that's just never how it happens, which would make him 2 times older than her at least. That would have to be it. But it kind of makes sense when you look at these Batman movies because Jack Napier was the Joker, so he's an actual person, and he was older in the first Batman movie, meaning he could be old enough to have a child of the age of Harley Quinn at that point in time, considering this is supposed to be 10 years after Batman killed the Joker. So nothing else is really known about the plot other than Batman and Robin getting this argument again, to which Robin leaves, and then he comes back to final battle to help defeat Scarecrow, and this was supposed to be the last time a villain dies in any of those movies. As you remember, when Joel Schumacher took over, the only villain that died was Two-Face when he went to catch the coin in the pit and fell down onto the spikes and ultimately passed away. The Riddler, Poison Ivy, and Mr. Freeze were all sent to Arkham, whereas Tim Burton early on, the Joker and the Penguin died, and of course, to kind of meet the same fate as her father, I guess, Harley Quinn was supposed to be killed off when she would have fell into the same vat of acid that her father did, and we would have never seen her again at that point in time because the movie franchise would have been over, and that's how it would have been. And looking at the research and just seeing this, it just really intrigues me because, you know, you have Harley Quinn and Scarecrow, who could have been played by one of 2 people, so we don't even know how it would have turned out because we don't really officially know other than these were the final 2 choices, but they were never hired. And maybe if the script would have been good enough, this could have gave George Clooney a second chance. But he wants the second chance, but after Batman and Robin and how bad it was and how poorly it was received, he just kind of gave up on the role overall, and after Warner Brothers didn't want to tackle this movie because of the results of Batman and Robin, it all got canned, and that was it. I don't think it ever made it out of pre-production. It's just been kind of discussed. There's a little bit of a plot out there, but nothing much. And of course we know the main actors that return and some of the actors that were going to be seen portrayed by the new characters involved. So yeah, it would have been an interesting take. Now, if you do remember, they do something similar in Batman Begins where they do introduce a Scarecrow, so they at least interpreted him in 8 years later, and Harley Quinn, again, they had a plan in the Christopher Nolan trilogy to bring her along in the 3rd installment when the whole thing was supposed to take place in Arkham Asylum, but because of Heath Ledger's death, obviously they had to can that idea, go with something else, and we wouldn't get Harley Quinn on the big screen until 2016 Suicide Squad. There was one thing in one video that I did mention that I was wrong on. 2016 Suicide Squad was not the first live-action adaptation of Harley Quinn. It was actually the 2002 Birds of Prey series. I didn't know that existed. It was technically, if Batman Triumphant, when it came out, it would have been the second live-action adaptation, but since that didn't come out and Birds of Prey did, that was the first live-action adaptation of Harley Quinn. So I'll change it to say 2016 Suicide Squad was the first big screen live-action adaptation we got to see of Harley Quinn, and Margot Robbie has since made the character even more popular than she was before, to the point where she's gotten her own movie, she's got her own cartoon series now, but it would have been interesting to see how well her character would have did with this movie and the new backstory that she would have been given. Would the character still be as popular? Would the character have been forgotten? And good lord, part of me just wants to hear Madonna and or Courtney Love do this, because maybe I would have been surprised. I don't know. People were shocked when Michael Keaton was picked to play Batman, but he's surprised. Everybody was surprised when Danny DeVito was picked to play Penguin, but he's surprised. Heck, I would say that when I was little and I saw Jim Carrey was playing the Riddler, I had my doubts, and I was like 7 or 8 when I first watched that movie, but after watching it I'm like, huh, you know, he's still true to himself, Jim Carrey, but he's also playing the serious bad guy pretty well for what it's worth there, so even that surprised me too. So I can't really sit here and bash Madonna or Courtney Love for playing Harley Quinn, because we never got to see it, and they never got the chance to show what they could or couldn't do in this case. So yeah, that's it about the lost Batman Joel Schumacher movie, Batman Triumphant. It'll be interesting to see what you guys think. Maybe you have seen more in your research about this movie, but I also plan on doing one about Superman Lives, one of the most infamous lost DC movies ever, where Nick Cage, there's that man again, was supposed to play Superman. Yes, you heard me right, Nicolas Cage was supposed to be Clark Kent. It's still weird to this day to think that, but it was also written by Kevin Smith of Clerks and Jay and Silent Bob fame, so it would have been really, really weird and intriguing to see. And that movie also would have been directed by Tim Burton. What do you know? He was going to do the 2 biggest superheroes in DC Comics, but never got to. Never got to with that. Yeah, that's it for me. Stay safe out there. Wear your mask, get vaccinated, and until then, I will catch you all in the next one.